Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Well, Jeff, the continued concern over the increasing spread of coronavirus and the effects that it's having on the global market. Also, OPEC is planning to slash oil prices over fears of the coronavirus. And lastly, or at least one more article we're going to talk about is the truce that's going to be signed in regards to the war that's been going on for 19 years between the United States and Afghanistan. Well, that's, of course, a few of the things that we're going to talk about today. But first, we're going to talk about the markets. The worst two-day drop in the Dow since February of 2008 recently occurred with a 1,900-point drop on fears of the coronavirus and its effects could impact your wallet. Well, Rebecca Jarvis, an ABC News chief correspondent for business and economics, said that traders hate uncertainty, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the market at this time. In fact, in the last 2 days, we have seen over $1.7 trillion wiped out in the U.S. stock market. Well, even small businesses are suffering, saying that they can't get their products from Chinese manufacturers, so they don't know when they can get them to their customers.
Right, and so much comes from China. I can see why they're concerned with the
for sure.
bottom line. Well, analysts say they have no idea of what effect the virus is going to have on the stock market in the next few months, not knowing what the containment measures are going to be, and companies are withdrawing earning estimates. Well, the drop in the Dow Jones was the worst week on record, and market professionals say the market will get worse before it gets better.
Dr. Pete Soll, a Park University professor of economics, said the problem with the stock market is they're always looking for problems. They're looking for problems 6 months or a year from now. Well, the current problem is the coronavirus. Dr. Soll said that he expects a continued downturn, whether it's a complete crash or not. He thinks it will eventually be turned around in the not too distant future.
Well, this market volatility will affect the housing market for better or for worse. Now, Freddie Mac said mortgage rates have dropped again to 3.45% for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, but Dr. Soll thinks that interest rates will remain the same. Now, remodeling or building cost could actually cost more as the lumber comes from overseas, which would drive those prices up or stop the supply, and actually the supply itself would be running low and again drive up those prices.
That's right. Well, looking for some hand sanitizer to help keep the bad bugs away? Well, if you're planning to purchase hand sanitizer like Perel, for instance, which normally sells for $9 for a 1-liter bottle or about $18 for a 2-pack, some retailers are gouging customers by selling that same 2-pack product for $299 on Amazon. Well, a spokesperson for Amazon said there's no place for price gouging, and Amazon has recently blocked or removed tens of thousands of offers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just hand sanitizers across the country. Face masks, disinfectant wipes, and other products are selling or are sold out, leaving shelves empty. Now, some retail locations are actually putting limitations on how much customers can purchase. In the New York area, one customer went to 3 stores before she found hand sanitizer. When she did and actually went to the checkout, she was told it was going to be $50, to which she said was disgusting, and that retailers are taking advantage of people. Now, some are refusing to pay those sky-high prices.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go to most public restrooms, like, in a Walmart or a grocery store, that stuff's just sitting on the wall for free. Not to mention a lot of grocery stores have those sanitizing wipes that you can actually just take and use for free. So, I mean, it's amazing, gone from a very low price to an exorbitant amount just because of people's fears over the virus. Well, virus protection products have skyrocketed in the last 2 months, not 50, not 100, but 817%. Another listing on Amazon offers a box of 4 N95 face masks that normally sell for about $20 a box, currently selling for just under $1,200 per box. Well, Lorelei Salas, a commissioner for the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs, said that this isn't the time to be making a buck on the backs of hard-working people who are just very anxious and scared. Well, businesses need to keep the prices normal, or they will have to justify the price increases.
Well, experts say a great way to prevent from getting sick is to wash your hands for 20 seconds. And masks are great, but mostly for those who have the virus to keep it from spreading, as they won't really protect you from getting the virus.
Interesting. So just how far are some countries going to keep the spread of the coronavirus to a minimum? Well, Italy, Iran, and Israel are just a few of the countries enacting stringent measures to stop the spread. Italy has closed all schools and universities for at least 2 weeks. Saudi Arabia and Iran have suspended pilgrimages to holy sites. And Israel has either banned travelers from affected areas or ordered people to self-quarantine, while in France, French authorities are regulating the commerce of masks and hand sanitizers.
Well, so far, lawmakers, doctors, and the institutions that we rely on are being tested because no one currently knows the long-term effects that this virus is going to have on the global economy and other infrastructures. Now, the slump in stocks and oil prices point to a scaling back in the economy. In France, as they deal with the virus and work to find a vaccine, public researchers were on strike because of funding cuts, which has hospital workers worried about the rollback of a welfare state. Now, if super viruses are the new normal, then what's the policy going to be from the lawmakers?
Well, Larry McGee has some updates for us on policies that are going to affect the oil market over fears of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, along with more information on the ongoing Nord Stream project. Larry, what do you have for us?
The battle to dominate the global energy market is a key component in the escalating hostilities between the world's present powers. The United States intends to win that battle, but that means subduing Russia, who is working itself to defeat America's efforts and establish a system where Moscow is the head and not the tail. For Russia, this has meant playing the interventionist hero for the bullied and oppressed, while also creating economic cooperation between itself and those who have also been marginalized and denied fair access to global trade. One such effort at cooperation is the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a venture initiated and led by Moscow to distribute natural gas from Russia to various consumers throughout Europe. The project has had to contend with American might, however, and has been hassled by sanctions and other maneuvers, but it is reported to be in its final phase of completion. And speaking to that fact, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov stated that the restrictions imposed against the pipeline are a cynical interference in the affairs of European business. However, despite the hassles and various partners reconsidering their participation due to American pressure, the project still maintains the support of several, including Germany, which is Europe's strongest economy, and is scheduled to be completed by the end of the year. Some analysts are calling this year the end of OPEC's tight grip on the oil market. The organization is said to be facing the largest collapse in crude oil demand on record and is currently pursuing drastic measures to try and stabilize itself. One primary cause for the breakdown is thought to be China, which has a huge appetite for petrol, but hasn't grown as quickly as forecasters projected. In addition to that, the woe of the coronavirus has reduced Chinese consumption even further, and OPEC members are now in deliberation to discuss collective measures to slash oil production for fear of the plague hurting oil business even further yet still. OPEC leaders have already proposed and won production reductions in the recent past, so there is reported to be discord with some member nations such as Libya and Iraq, who are entirely disinterested in taking yet another hit to their revenues. Meanwhile, in the midst of the turmoil, America has been mounting a subtle victory, flooding the market with cheap petrol and moving discreetly into the #1 spot for oil production. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, as Larry was reporting, so much of our economy focuses on oil. You can see why they're a little bit scared seeing those prices fall.
Yeah, I mean, and the people who are in the higher ranks in the offices there, they spend a lot of money over there, you know, in Saudi Arabia and the OPEC nations. And so if that money isn't coming in by the sales of oils, then things kind of get a little bit sketchy for them. Yeah.
Well, there hasn't been a longer war fought by the United States than the one in Afghanistan, which started back in October of 2001, right after 9/11 took place. But just this week, the U.S. and the Taliban's top negotiators signed a historic peace agreement that could end the 19-year-long war. Not only was the agreement written on paper for the officials to read and sign, but it was written on the wall for witnesses to read as well.
That's right. One of those witnesses was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who told reporters afterwards, "We recognize that America shouldn't fight in perpetuity in the graveyard of empires if we can help Afghans forge peace," of course. He said, "We believe that the Afghan people are ready to chart their own course forward." Well, the course has taken both sides through a year of very tough negotiations.
Well, within the agreement, President Trump's administration has promised to pull out 5,000 of the nearly 13,000 troops that are currently stationed in Afghanistan within 135 days. And by the end of the 14 months, the U.S. will make a complete withdrawal.
Right. Well, while it seems like this new peace agreement could end the war in Afghanistan, there are strong signs coming in already that it might not. Well, just 4 days after signing the peace deal, the U.S. carried out airstrikes in the Helmand province and at a Taliban-held position. U.S. military officials report it was done to defend the Afghan government positions that were there.
So can the United States really declare the war is over in Afghanistan if our troops are still conducting airstrikes against the Taliban forces? Would kind of seem hard to believe.
Right.
But since the war began near the end of 2001, hundreds of thousands of Americans have served in Afghanistan. $1 trillion has been spent, and 2,000 troops have lost their lives.
Well, the war has lasted for almost 19 years, which means it has spanned the lifetime of a generation of children, some who are not even as old as the war itself. And even now, there are signs of it ending. There is still a talk of $20 billion being spent on it. Kind of hard to believe that they're really calling a truce.
Well, turning to the war in Syria, it has been going on for 9 years as of March 11th, and Turkey does not seem to be easing up with Operation Spring Shield now in full swing. So far, Turkish forces have struck Syrian armies' ammunition depots, tanks, and air defense systems. They've shot down a warplane in southern Idlib as well.
And Turkey has ramped up the attack, saying it's determined to stop Syrian army troops from reaching the city of Idlib, which is the rebels' one remaining stronghold. Officials say the military campaign has severely undermined the Syrian army's capabilities. But even still, Syrian troops are still pushing forward towards Idlib, recapturing the city of Sarakab, located at the intersection of the M4 and M5 highways.
Well, the United States has contributed $100 million in aid for the deteriorating humanitarian crisis. Now, Special Envoy for Syria, James Jeffrey, and Kelly Craft, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, recently traveled to the Syrian border to see for themselves what's taking place. Now, while there, they met with Syrian white helmets.
The U.S. ambassador told Al Jazeera humanitarian aid is only a response. The real answer is an immediate ceasefire or durable ceasefire. Well, she continued, this is obviously a moment that we need to make certain that the Americans care, but at the same time, there has got to be an immediate ceasefire. And the ceasefire has been agreed to by, of course, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to take effect at midnight on March 5th.
Well, RT has learned from the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov that China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States are considering holding a summit to discuss nuclear non-proliferation. Now, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council all have nuclear weapons. The U.S. and Russia being the leaders in number of nuclear weapons owned by any country. While no dates have actually been set, it's thought that it could take place sometime in September and probably in New York.
United Nations disarmament chief has warned the UN Security Council, a nuclear arms race is threatening the world. Well, at the same time, Russia has been trying to extend the last remaining nuclear treaty between them and the U.S. before it expires.
Well, the UN disarmament chief, Izumi Nakamitsu, also says the problem is worsened by fractured relationships between nuclear weapon states, referring to the United States, Russia, and China. Now, she also said, we are witnessing what has been termed a qualitative nuclear arms race, one not based on numbers, but on faster, stealthier, and more accurate weapons. And she added, regional conflicts with a nuclear dimension are worsening and proliferation challenges are not receding.
Well, if you remember, we reported back in 2019, the U.S. was the first to pull out of the historic Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which was signed in 1987 by President Ronald Reagan and President Mikhail Gorbachev. The U.S. reasoning was it claimed Russia had violated the treaty's term. However, Russia denied these claims, and in response to the U.S. pulling out, Russia followed suit, ending the 32-year treaty.
Well, the INF Treaty between Russia and the U.S. was a cornerstone for arms control since the Cold War, and fears rose when the U.S. backed out of the deal there would be a new arms race. Now, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the U.S. of undermining the international agreement.
Speaking at the United Nations Conference on Disarmament this week, Lavrov said, "The aspiration to dominate elsewhere and impose on the world community their own rules and the prejudice of other countries' interests in international law has prevailed in U.S. politics recently. All international agreements and mechanisms that hinder such domination are called outdated and non-efficient."
And if that wasn't enough, a senior Russian diplomat said the U.S. has declined an invitation to hold formal talks on extending START, which stands for Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, that is set to expire 1 year from now.
Well, the purpose of START is to limit the amount of nuclear warheads and the way that they are delivered. Russia wants the treaty to be extended, but the U.S. has suggested that China joins the pact as well. However, Beijing wants no part of that deal.
And it's interesting that that those 3 countries, plus France and the UK, are considering a meeting to discuss reducing weapons overall. I mean, they are some of the big nuclear powers, but of course we see what the United States has responded, saying they're not interested in it. And they actually want China to jump on board, which China said, we've reported on before, wants no part in that. They never were in that nuclear, the non-nuclear deal, so they don't want to be involved in it now. But the very fact that these countries are wanting to discuss a reduction in nuclear weapons is a great start, but the United States there is saying we don't want any part in it.
Well, of course, when you're the country with the biggest military and the biggest budget on military spending in the world, you don't want to be the guy left at the end of the pack having the least amount of weapons, because of the things that many of the leaders have said. Even United States presidents have mentioned many times in regards to conflicts with various nations that preemptive strike is always an option that's on the table. And we know United States and Russia are the 2 countries that hold the most amount of nuclear warheads in the world, over, I don't know, it's 14,000, somewhere around that combined between the 2. So yeah, like you said, it's great that countries want to talk about coming together to reduce the arms, but really what we need for them to do is to come together to eliminate the arms and bring about some type of peaceful solution that all countries, all leaders of the countries can agree with and that everyone, including not only the leaders, but the citizens of those countries, can benefit from.
Well, Yishra Hawkins of the House of Yahweh has been talking about the nuclear wars that are coming, but if you'd like to find out about what you and your family can do to protect yourselves, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget to request your copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the free resources, study material available to you online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures, the laws, and the prophets. You can find that by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, Yishra Hawkins has some very interesting facts on the coronavirus. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.